Well, Will, we're back. I don't know. I'm not sure
Groovy, baby.
exactly what happened there, but
Oh,
hopefully our
sure.
viewers will find us. If not, they'll find the show, and I'll edit this all into one show later. But
Perfect.
and you're way higher again, which is really weird.
Well, I'm sitting close to my thing. I'm trying to adjust my focus. It's obviously out a little bit. I must have bumped it when I was adjusting the camera earlier.
Yeah.
But
So I was listening to you. It was a.
it's getting worse now.
It was an
Continue.
interesting video. We will, give, give, from the eyes of the lawyer, who looks at this and says, "Why don't they have bail, or why weren't
Yeah.
they offered bail? Why are they in prison when it's only for mischief?" And I realize that that's a catch-all in your system, and it sounds like it's so minuscule. It can mean more. I don't think in this case it does. It just, in my mind, from my non-legal mind, it means that they didn't know what to charge them with, so they used a catch-all, which was easy to
I mean,
apply.
I feel like the mischief charge is the only charge that they can really do. I mean, I don't know if they could charge him with anything else for doing nothing but protesting. And the protesting is lawful. The blocking of traffic isn't necessarily lawful. And I think that's where they're getting the mischief from. It's the only thing they can reasonably charge them with because there was not enough aggression or violence on the part of protesters to justify
Right.
uh, swinging at them from that point of view. There
Right.
just wasn't. So I feel like that's the only way that they felt like they could get anything to stick, and so they went that route. I don't like that. I think that it's. I think that it's. What's the word I'm looking for? It's grasping at straws. I feel like
Yes.
there had to have been better options, like talking to them, but we've beat that horse to death
Right.
already.
So I also want to draw a little bit of a comparison in between her story and his story, for Pat King and
Mm-hmm.
for Tamara Litch.
Okay.
He's not my kind of hero. He sort of reminds me of the pastor in Calgary, the Ukrainian, I think he was, or
Yeah,
Polish.
I believe so.
What was his name
It was a
again?
Greek. It was a Greek Orthodox church, I believe.
I don't.
I can't remember his name. I promptly burnt it from my memory as soon as I could.
Artur.
Yeah,
Artur, who
Artur.
had a great point. I agreed with his idea. I despised his method. And I find with Pat King, he was aggressive.
Obstinate.
He was obstinate.
He's not wrong. He's
He
just
would
an
not have
ass.
been a friend of mine in terms of hang out with him, as I think he's a
Mhm.
bit of a redneck. He's a bit of a hothead. And
Yeah.
that's going to be obvious in this episode video, which we'll play here now.
What's that?
You're under arrest, sir.
For what?
For mischief, counseling to commit the offense of mischief, counseling to commit the offense of obstruct police officer, and counseling to commit the offense of disobey court orders. Would you please step out of the vehicle, sir?
I'd like to get my lawyer on the phone right away.
Sir.
I have the right to a lawyer?
Of course you do.
Yeah, so I'd
I
like
need
to call my
step out
lawyer
of the
presently
vehicle,
at this moment in
sir. I need to
time.
make sure everything's safe, so
Oh, you're safe, man, and you always have been.
I really appreciate that. I don't know who your occupants are. I don't know what's in the vehicle.
All our hands are free and clear. I have the opportunity right now.
It all stays the same. I'm going to let you talk to that lawyer. 100%.
I need my lawyer to be at the ready because he's waiting to come.
I know it's within your discretion.
Now, if you just give me a nice...
So
I understand that, but...
I'm being arrested by these officers right now. This officer here, they've cornered me, had me at the ready, and I'm being arrested. We'll talk to you guys soon. Are you live?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
I mean, again, he's technically not wrong wanting to get your lawyer involved.
Anybody who live streams his own arrest just reminds me of Artur. He's looking for publicity.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of get wanting to do it, especially considering the amount of BS being slung by mainstream media, wanting to have it documented. I think that's valid. I think you could have gone about it a whole different way. Instead of telling the officer, yeah, no, I'm going to do it this way, and just repeating the same sentence over and over again. I'd like to call my lawyer. I'd like to call my lawyer. I'd like to call my lawyer. He could have just said, "Hey, is it all right if I call my lawyer quick?" And the cop says, like he did, something to the effect of, "Yes, you can call your lawyer, but we need to get you outside of the car so we can just ensure that you're safe." That's protocol. That's I don't think that's anything against Mr. King personally. I think that's just protocol.
I thought it was interesting. The officer obviously could not remember the charges. He had to look back and get some clarification on the charges they were charging him for. I thought that was.
Yeah.
And
Probably
then
got
in
called one month
contrast,
before, and
and
he was just the first cop that was there. I doubt he was as jazzed to do it as anyone.
yeah. So this next video is actually it's a little bit of a stream right before the evening before the arrest of Miss Litch and Ms. Litch. Is it Lick or Litch?
I don't know.
Okay.
I've heard it pronounced both
L-I-C-H.
ways.
Hey, I'll call it Tamara. How's that? It's her live stream. I'll have a link in the in the doobly-doo. The thing that Will says.
There's been a lot of joy and a lot of happiness. And so the tears that I cry aren't tears of sadness. They are tears that what has happened and what is transpiring against my fellow Canadians breaks my heart. That. And I know there's a lot of anger at our government. There's a lot of rightful anger at our government. But I want you to know that Justin Trudeau has 3 beautiful children. So remember that.
I want to play that in contrast to Pat King.
Yeah.
Sort of reminds me of the pastor up in Edmonton or Stony Plain who was arrested.
Stony Plain, yeah.
There are ways of doing things. There are ways of saying things. There are ways of interacting with those who you don't agree with. But at the end of the day, and this is really what this show is about, is you have a pair of people who were arrested for mischief and for obstructing justice, I believe, and for disobeying a court order. And at the end of the day, they are in jail, held without bail.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy who ran over protesters in his vehicle was released on $10,000 bail.
Now, was he referencing Charlottesville or was he referencing the gunman in Toronto?
The week before. I don't even think it was in Toronto. I'm going to look it up because I looked it up yesterday.
More recent stuff?
Oh, yeah. It was on the way. The convoy was headed over to Ottawa. And they were in... Oh, I'll look it up.
Oh, it's a guy who hit the protesters?
Yes.
Ah.
And he ran over them in their Suburban. He was arrested, of course, because I believe he killed a couple. Or injured several. And I'm going to look it up here when I get all done talking. He was arrested, put in jail for 3 days a week or whatever, and until they had the bail hearing, and then he was released on $10,000 bail.
Yeah.
And
a threat to society.
Yeah. And all of us are asking, any reasonable human is asking, what's the difference here?
Mm-hmm.
Why is one released and the others are not? Now, I believe on the one, it may be because the unrepentant heart of Pat King, because he came out in the hearing, he said, yeah, I'm going to do it again. I'll do it differently, but I'll do it again. And they're like, well, if that's the case, maybe we won't give you bail. But honestly, so he's going to commit mischief again. Is he a threat to society?
No.
And
I don't see anything that says that he is. I mean, I say that with the evidence that I have seen, I see no evidence to say that. I haven't seen anything that makes me think that he's inciting violence. Maybe he has, and I just haven't seen it. That is a possibility. I just haven't come across anything that would constitute inciting violence or anything
I watched a
particularly
live
dangerous.
stream of his, and he uses a lot of F-bombs. And
Ooh, what?
oh yeah,
Canadian boy swearing?
yeah, and he's very impassioned about what he believes. But when you look for the for any reasonable reason, if that makes any sense, to hold these people without bail, there isn't any. There is no reason to hold these people as they're normal, everyday Canadians. When you play, like when you play that clip of Tamara's when she's saying, you know, a lot of us are angry at the government, except you have to remember our prime minister has 3 kids. You know, I have empathy for her. I have a lot harder time having empathy for a judge who looks at her and says, you're a threat to society, or you are a flight risk.
Or even just says nothing. He says, I've been sitting here since 9 a.m. I'm going to go home for the weekend and think about it.
Yeah.
While she sits in chains, literal chains. Like that boggles my mind that they're marching her in there in chains like she's some sort of killer. Get out of here.
And this is, I wrote a story on our Facebook page, and I'm not big on stories on Facebook. I think it's a thing, except no other way of saying this, that for the history of Canada, it really is a live and let you live society. It's not, there's a lot of tolerance in Canada. If you want to be gay, if you want to be whatever, if you want to be a Baha'i faith, or if you want to be a Christian, or if you want to be an atheist, we don't really care. And now all of that is taking a beating right now, as there's not a whole lot of tolerance with the leadership, and again, not from the people, but from the leadership. And I don't think that's going over very well in the streets of Canada.
No, it's a government that preaches tolerance is being very intolerant of an idea different from their own. And they're not even just being intolerant in the sense that they say, we don't agree with this, we don't think it's right. They're just trying to put it nicely, sweep it under the rug by just trying to punish the people who they think have caused it as harshly as they reasonably can without it being a bona fide miscarriage of justice, and hoping that they'll be cowed and everyone else will move on and move past it as quickly as possible. I maintain my hypothesis that is the overarching plan of the government right now, is just to bury it as quick as possible.
I hope they can't. I mean, I looked at the return into your town of Burn Buchert. A lot of people lining.
You think he was a war hero?
You would think he was a war hero. Like, there were hundreds of people in a town of thousands. Like it was a sizable percentage who were honoring him, who came back as though he was a war hero. That's actually, it's an apt description.
And that's just our town. It happened in many towns on his way back. Many
was
towns
at war.
It happened in Dawson
with his own government. And for Canada to ignore this, or to let it go, you know, with the easing of the COVID restrictions and everything, hopefully at the next election they'll remember this time.
I hope so.
As this is, and all the parties are at fault, as we have talked about, except I think in this case, you guys,
one party is calling the shots.
Well, and the NDP, I think, is equally as complicit in this.
And I mean, I think the NDP is. I think they're spineless, but I think they're also kind of backed into a corner. I think a lot of their constituents are under the umbrella of those who support the Liberal Party to at least a certain degree, and they're worried that if they if they stand in opposition to the Liberal Party, they'll lose more than they'll gain. And I don't agree with that decision, but I understand their reasoning behind it. I think
Yeah, it's a
I don't quite think it's egregious, but I think that it's incorrect.
I don't know. I look at the actions of Jagmeet Singh, and I do think it's egregious, as I think he had the opportunity of saying, no, I'm going to use my power, as he has a considerable amount of power, and say, I'm going to use my power. If you really want me to support you, you need to change this idea. He held the hammer and he didn't use it. He kowtowed.
Yeah,
And-
he could have just as easily said, "Hey, this is still a problem, but
Yeah.
the Emergencies Act is not the way to go about it.
Absolutely.
We don't support the protest, but we don't support these kinds of actions either." I don't know why.
And he
couldn't have
was
done something to that
spineless.
effect.
I think that's being nice. I think it was
Yeah.
it was worse than spineless. I think he was in on it, as he supported it, and I think that is
I don't know.
Yeah.
I want to think that he's not, but at the same time,
He voted
I
for
think
it.
It's
Like-
well, I mean, I voted NDP in a riding that would never.
no. He voted
get an
for it.
NDP
I mean,
seat. Oh, he did. Yeah,
like
yeah,
he
yeah.
voted for the act.
But-
He had the option. He had the
It's
option
been-
of using his power otherwise.
Yeah, but excuse me. They and members of the Liberal Party were being strong armed into towing the line and falling in step. There was a lot of political pressure put on them. Again, I don't think that necessarily justifies his decision, but I don't necessarily think that it was malicious. Just spineless.
Man, you're being way nicer to him than I can be, and I don't even live up there. It's a
I mean, we're paying for it now with fuel prices.
oh,
Although I think
my.
that's more of a Russia thing than a Canadian government thing.
Yeah, because everybody here is yelling at Biden because of prices.
I mean,
And yes, I agree with you, Kyle. Great feeders.
Yeah.
Great leaders fall in
Always.
line. Yeah.
I had higher hopes for him, but he has not lived up to them.
So next week we will have an interview on the show, live on the show with Byrne, who rolled into
Yes.
your town, who was in Ottawa,
Yep.
had his
built
vehicle
the sign.
impounded. I don't know if he had his bank accounts frozen. I don't believe
I don't
so.
know either.
But we will learn all the dirty details next week.
Mhm.
And I have a recommendation, and I don't know who you call in Canada, if it's your MP, which in your riding would be Zimmer, I believe.
You
is it
can
not?
reach out to them, yeah.
and say, what the heck is with the holding
Mhm.
of King and Lich?
Yeah.
Like, honestly.
If you ever want an exercise in insanity, go watch parliamentary sessions. You can find them on YouTube. They happen live, I believe.
Yes, they do.
It is maddening. It is maddening watching these MPs ask each other for like straight answers. And it happens across both party lines. But they'll ask like a straightforward question. And one of them, I'm sure, asked something along those lines, like, why are they being a prisoner? Why are these things happening? And they will do everything under the sun not
Except
to answer,
answer.
it.
Yes.
Except answer it.
Except answer it. Yes.
I would call them the kings of evading questions, but they're shit at it. Like it's so blatant.
Yes.
It's so abhorrent. Like it's stupid. You
And
will
we
have a
pay these.
you'll have a hard time wasting your time better. You're better off watching paint dry than watching these politicians try to give straight answers in Parliament. It's terrible.
Well, except for the fact that they are your leadership.
Let's see. I want kids to see it. I really do. I want kids to see it, and I want them
How
to look
bad
at
it
it and
is?
be like, "Wow, we're better at communicating than they are." I want kids to see it, and even the youngest of children should be able to look at that and recognize how stupid it is.
That's true. I can't argue
I have
with
seen
that.
children repeat questions less times than I have seen politicians repeat questions, and I have seen children answer straighter about things they know nothing about than politicians who obviously know things.
Yes.
So I want kids to watch them, and I want people to point out how stupid it is, how absolutely how much of a farce it is. That is our Royal Canadian Air farce. Is our own parliament.
Mike from Kenmore. I was watching the interview with the founder of Give It Sent Go, the fundraising platform, who did the.
Mm-hmm.
He was interviewed in your parliament or your house or your senate or whichever one was interviewing, and it was mind-numbing. As he said, if it is legal, he said, I let him do it. He said, I don't have to agree with what they're raising money for. He said, all I need to know is that it is legal. If it's legal, he said, I'm not going to stop them.
Yeah.
And the MP, I forget her name, she said, so that means you would allow the Proud Boys. And he said, if what they're raising for is legal, then yes, I would, because it's legal. If it is legal, I will allow them to do it.
He's not there to choose sides.
And she said, and so you would allow the KKK. And he again said, if it's legal, I allow them to do it. He went back to this.
Yeah.
If their actions are legal, he said, yes, I would allow it.
Yeah.
And she said, well, we don't allow hate in Canada. And it just is
the guy running the GoFundMe has no control over that.
Yes. If it's legal, how can you stop it?
This is something that is, oh God.
It's okay. Open up. Let it out. It's okay.
This is a problem that I'm seeing repeatedly, and it happened in Europe, and it has tried to happen in the States, and this is tangentially related to that. This concept that I think I would say people on the left seem to have this misconception that people's intentions are simple to police, especially when you're talking about a business, and especially when you're talking about an online business like a fundraising platform online. There's no human way for any online platform to properly screen everything that comes through their doors. It's impossible. They can do all they can. And when you look at YouTube is the biggest, and they have put the most money into it. And what we've ended up with is an algorithm that is garbage.
Yes.
At detecting awfulness. It's terrible, but it's the best we can do because there is no workforce in the world that's strong enough to figure this out and to sift through this much crap. And they seem to think that just because companies just because they have a window of allowance, a perfectly acceptable and legal window of allowance, that they are somehow in support of the things that get through that window. No. And if we're not careful, we're going to end up with crap like what's happening in Europe right now, which is where the European Union is expecting websites or companies that host websites to moderate all the traffic that comes through their website. And if they don't, they could potentially be liable for the actions of the people that use their websites. Can you imagine if everyone that said crappy stuff on Facebook, if Facebook was somehow liable for the crappy things they say? Facebook would just fold. And Facebook has threatened to do that in the EU now. They are threatening to pull their services from certain areas because there is no way to moderate it, and they will not take the liability. This kind of crap, saying that this person who runs a fundraising website is somehow enabling these things. They're not enabling it. They just can't stop it. It's not their job to stop it.
Why do we allow the people who for years were selling the boxes of cigarettes? Why don't we go after the manufacturers of paper and say, ooh,
if someone's using your paper wrong, it's your fault.
Yes, it's your fault for what they're using it for. And this has been my argument for a long time against this whole holding of social media accountable for what people say on social media. But
I mean, I hold people accountable for what they say on social media. I don't hold Facebook accountable for what people say on social media.
I agree.
When the Proud Boys make horrible videos, I don't blame YouTube for well, I mean, if they're illegal, I blame YouTube. But like, But Alex Jones is a great example. If Alex Jones wants to spout his crap on Facebook or YouTube or any platform, let him.
But there
Like,
is a
I'm not
little
saying
bit
they
of an
can't.
argument here, Will, God, that you can take that says for YouTube and for Facebook and for Twitter, especially at Twitter,
Mhm.
is the algorithms are meant to if you engage or disagree, it automatically brings it up.
Well,
Brings
yeah,
it up
because
in
it's
your feeds.
engagement.
Right.
That's
So there is an argument that said, hey, if your algorithms are going to make it worse,
Mhm.
then yes, we're going to hold you accountable.
Oh, absolutely. That is
Yes.
valid. That is valid.
Yes.
Holding the algorithms, I think, accountable to a degree is totally valid.
What a
But
new world we've
holding,
come in, holding an algorithm accountable.
I know, right?
Holding the creator of the
Or
algorithm
yeah, I was gonna say
accountable.
them being the creator of the algorithm. I
Yes.
think that could be held accountable. That's like a newspaper publishing. Well, no, I would say that is effectively the algorithm is. It's not just allowing shady content through, but it's pushing shady content on
Yes.
people, and that I think is
Yes.
definitely an offense that's worth looking at.
I would agree.
But just having the option available is not necessarily an offense. Inevitably, stuff's going to fall through the cracks. You can only moderate so much. YouTube can only catch so much child pornography on their website. Some of it's going to get, I'm using that as a harsh example for the record, but
Right.
they can only
true.
moderate so much. There's
It's
so
true.
many
It's true.
tens of thousands of hours of it getting uploaded every single month. They can only do so much. But
Very true.
if they have an algorithm that pushes it to the forefront, that is why. So, fun fact here, small history lesson. That is why flat Earth theory got so big. It has nothing to do with flat Earth being a good theory and everything to do with the fact that a couple of people thought it was ridiculous, and the algorithm picked up on how much engagement there was, and the algorithm ran with it. Most flat Earth proponents, even the biggest channels on YouTube, really are not very big, but their ideas became
Yes.
far-reaching because the
That's true.
algorithm was like, "Ooh, people are interested in this. Let's make more people watch it." So flat Earth becoming a big global phenomenon had nothing to do with flat Earthers being smart, and everything to do with a computer program having a hiccup.
So we have sort of morphed this into from the freedom of speech and the freedom of ideas
guess, yeah.
into algorithms. And we probably should get back on track because we could go a
Yeah.
long way down this rabbit hole. The idea that the organizers of the truckers and the money that they were raising, etc., is in any way inherently evil or hateful
Yeah.
is
And-
really is such a stretch.
And holding the organizers of a peaceful protest accountable for the bad actors that showed up is also not it's not okay. And
Right.
I will draw this parallel again, and I've drawn it repeatedly. The same thing did not apply from the left when it happened with the BLM protests after the death of George Floyd. We did not hold all protesters accountable for the actions of the rioters. We said, oh, there's rioters and there's protesters, and they're two different things. There were people who showed up to peacefully protest this awful thing that happened and this terrible state that society is in, and then there are the rioters and the people who are doing violent things. And we drew that distinction, but all of a sudden now we're not. And that's bogus. You can't hold the whole group responsible for the actions of a few.
Here's the thing, though, Will, and this is the hard part of this, is that it's your government doing it.
Yes.
It isn't the left.
Yes.
It isn't the crazy rights. It is not the crazy left people. It's your government doing it.
Yeah. And they're trying to do it, quote unquote,
And that-
quietly.
Should frighten people a little bit.
It certainly concerns me. Which actually, sorry, yes, I
Go
do
ahead.
agree with
No, I want to hear your thoughts
Well,
because
I wanted.
we're as close to agreeing tonight as we have been,
I know,
and
right?
so we need to keep this thing going.
I want to bookend this actually, kind of with my final complaint with the video at the very beginning.
Okay, the Viva
And
Fray.
it ties,
Okay.
yeah, and it ties into what we were just talking about. When I say we can't blame the majority group for the actions of the few, of the minority, a distinction can be drawn there in that the people who do awful things, the guys who flew swastikas on flags, the guys who broke into places, the guys who roughed up employees or shouted at employees because they weren't allowed to use the bathrooms because they didn't have masks on, etc. Those assholes.
Mhm.
At no point did anyone that I've ever talked to, like I live and work around people who are fanatically supportive of this protest.
Right.
At no point have they ever been like, that was okay. They're all like, those guys are awful. and we need to get rid of them. We need to make sure they
Right.
don't sully the name of our protest, of our movement, of our cause.
Right.
At no point have they even remotely accepted or encouraged that kind of behavior that I have seen. I haven't seen it on the ground in videos. I haven't seen it here, like where a lot of their supporters are. In the video that we watched at the beginning, he said that this is our January 6th. And here's where I draw a distinction. January 6th had a lot of support from people outside that minority of people who did it. There are a lot of people who sat back after January 6th when Congress was stormed, or the Capitol was stormed, and said, no, this is like, those are just patriots, or they're just upset at the way things are and all this awful stuff. And they tried to justify the bad few. I still agree with what you've said before as well, that people are frustrated. People are angry with the way things are. And this is the outcome, the extreme outcome, but the outcome of that they're feeling unheard and unlistened to. But it's not the same. We're not justifying the actions of the few. We're decrying them, and we're still saying they're bad, but the protest still has value. And in January 6th case, I don't equate our protests here in Canada anything remotely close to January 6th, nor do I consider the miscarriages of justice that are happening right now to anything that happened around January 6th. January 6th was an appalling act
Well,
of
I think we're looking at a difference of numbers, Will. I think in January
That too.
6th, there were 300, I think, who stormed the Capitol building, or if it was even that many.
yeah.
And they were in a huge crowd of 100,000 or 90,000 or whatever was there. I think
Whatever
when
it
you look
was,
at the race shows, it probably is about the same as Ottawa.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
crazy
But that's
people
what I'm
and the-
saying, though.
And the normal people.
Is-
I
is the
think
peop-
I'd argue with you a little bit on the fact that there's a lot of us here who look at what happened with the crazy people on the 6th of
January 6th.
January
Oh,
and
yeah.
said, no, we don't condone that, and we never will. And
No, absolutely. But
so
that's
there
what I'm
is
saying.
a comparison. So there is a comparison of January 6th. As there was a few crazies in
Yes.
Ottawa, and he was saying, this is our January the 6th.
But it's
We're-
not, though. That's what I'm saying, though, is like there's nobody defending, like virtually nobody defending the violent acts, what few violent acts
Right.
happened in Ottawa. There is a reasonable chunk of the hard right people in America that defended January 6th. And that's where I draw the distinction.
And I would give
because-
you that. I would give you that.
Yeah,
I mean,
I draw the
there's a lot of
distinction
crazy
because-
people in the States who
Yeah.
agree with what happened on January 6th. Well, I say a
And
lot.
January
I think,
6th was a much more extreme situation than what we were dealing with. What we
Yes.
had here in Canada
Yes.
was not even in the same zip code
yes.
as the Capitol
That's
building
true.
on January 6th.
You're
and
in
so
Canada,
I
it's
think
a
that's-
postal code, by
yeah.
the way.
Whatever. I think that's a horrible. It's not an apples to apples comparison. I don't like
You're
what
right.
happened. What's happening here being
I would
compared to
agree with you.
January 6th. I think that is
I would agree with you
the
on
word I'm
that.
looking for. It's embellishment. He's trying to make a bombastic statement to make it
Yes.
sound like it is bad. It is bad,
Yes.
but we don't have to blow it out of proportion like that.
But more, I
think that
think, I think his comparison was more along the lines of how it was dealt with. As here, there are people who are being held without bail for doing things that are borderline. That there are people who murder people who are out on bail, who
Yes.
are accused of
And
murder.
that
So,
is an
so that
absolutely
was his
valid point,
comparison,
and
I
would be
believe.
upset too.
but
That may be. Maybe I'm reading it wrong. It's possible.
But I think as Canadians, and we agree on this one, I believe,
Mhm.
you guys need to do some soul searching at your next election.
Yeah.
And
we
my
need to- we
God,
need to
I
find some better
hope you can
politicians
get-
is what we need.
I hope you can find a politician on one of your parties who will stand for the people.
I mean, it'd be nice.
Looking at your parliament, I'm not holding my breath. Like even Kenneth Bergen, I mean, who is a rancher, I believe,
I'm not sure.
who is from the grassroots. I mean, I heard her when she was, and it was live. I watched it live when she gets up and says, "We've heard you. You need to go home now, truckers." And they're like, I don't think you've heard us because you haven't met with us yet." And,
Yeah.
again, This is the conservative leader. I think you guys need to come up with some new leaders.
Yeah.
Is it the Mavericks party? I hope not, because I'm not sure that they're where there's enough
They're
of them
still
yet.
they're still a party in their infancy. They have a lot of growing up to do.
Yeah. You
Which
know, it,
I mean, I don't think it's a bad thing. I think that we need fresh blood in the game
is it the
because
PPC?
right now also I hope not. They're kind of assholes. I like their ideals, but their leadership is kind of a bunch of schmucks.
Well, maybe they'll find some
Not
new
the
leaders out
people.
of this.
It'd be nice. It would be nice.
You know, I think
I
as
feel like-
Canadians, you need to look for it. You need to look for it somewhere.
I feel like our political gene pool has grown very stale. It needs a good cleaning. It needs some fresh water. Some new life breathed into it.
So why don't you run?
Why don't I run?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not. I wouldn't get very far.
So I
I'm
drove
not-
Uber for 4 or 5 years.
Mhm.
And every younger person got in my car. We usually would talk about politics or COVID when COVID came.
Mhm.
But every person under 30, I would look at them. I say, "Are you involved in politics?" They look at me and say, "No." And I'd say, "You need to get involved. If not, you're going to have these old farts."
Yeah, I want to get involved in politics. It's something that I would like to do, but there's
Will
a
for
point
mayor.
where I have to ask. It's interesting because like in our town there have been multiple in the last couple of years. There's been multiple very young people shooting for city council
Yes.
with varying degrees of success. And it's something that's on my radar because I don't see myself leaving the area anytime soon. And so I thought about it, but there's a point where I question, is my time better spent trying to make the world politically better through a platform like this, commentating and talking and reaching a broad audience, or is it better spent actually in the offices trying to make the change? And I don't know.
Why can't it be both?
I mean, theoretically, it could. There's
Yes.
going to be a lot of red tape around what I could talk about on a show and what actually happens behind closed doors, I'm sure.
There's no red tape. Look at Donald Trump. There's no red tape anywhere.
Well, I mean, he's going to court for the amount of red tape that he
You
ate.
can say what you want.
But it's a thought. Like, I don't want to discount it, but it takes. I sit here and I sit back and I critique other politicians and I question their moves and their missteps or what I perceive as missteps. And from the outside, it's easy to critique that. But do I think that I personally have the fortitude to do it myself? If I am reviewing anything, I could review food. Maybe I can taste food and maybe my palate's good and I can have good opinions on food, but that doesn't mean I'm a good chef. Not necessarily. I don't necessarily know if I would make a good chef, just like I don't necessarily know if I'd make a good politician. I don't know if I don't think highly enough of myself to think that I can meet the ideals of what I want in a politician.
Yeah, but you don't think
Maybe
highly
my
enough of
ideals are
politicians either. So it's
No,
you're
but I
raising
want
the bar some.
I want politicians that I can think more highly of, but I don't know if I'm the right person for that. It's one thing for me to have opinions and hopes and
Okay.
aspirations for others. It's another for me to manage to realize them myself.
I'll put it this way then. You don't need to run, but how about you get involved?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
At the minimum, everybody under 30 ought to vote at a
Oh, absolutely.
minimum. And
Everyone over the age
I'd
of
rather
19.
you got active, who to vote
Mm-hmm.
for, and go out and promote people and do shows like this.
Mhm.
Even if we don't agree with you as old people, I used
Yeah.
to say this in the car all the time. Even if old guys like me do not approve, it doesn't matter. It's your world.
Mhm.
And unfortunately for you Canadians, you have elected a government who is not acting in your best interest right now.
No, we don't really have very many great options that look like they're acting in our best interest. It's just
No.
different small sections of our interests.
You know, I'm watching the mayor of your town, and I'm a fan of hers. And she has had to be so careful in what she has said, as it will cost her in the long run if she bucks the system. There's something wrong with that. There is something
Yeah.
wrong with that. And yet
That's
it's true.
that's a big part of why I don't think I could do well in politics. Is I don't I don't think I have the wherewithal to navigate that. It's one thing for me to speak my mind and think that, having a spine and sticking up for what's right is going to take me places. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. I'm sure lots of people try to get into politics who have a good head on their shoulders and a strong upper lip, and they don't make it because they can't play the game.
It's true.
So you have to be someone who both has a stiff upper lip and can play the game.
Yes.
You basically got to fake it till you make it, and then once you make it, then you can make changes, you can make waves, but you got to
It's
got to
true.
make it the totem pole. And I would wager that a lot of politicians were good people at the beginning of their careers. I don't think you'd make it through a lifetime of doing that sort of thing without some of it rubbing off.
I think you're true. Or you're right. I would
I
agree
don't want
with
to.
that.
I don't want to look at people like Mitch McConnell and think that he's always been a rat's ass. I'm sure he was a really good person once.
See, I think the same thing about John Horgan. There just is nothing
Yeah.
appealing to me about John Horgan.
Yeah.
Or a number of other politicians in Canada and the U.S. I mean,
To be perfectly honest, I get very similar vibes from Jagmeet right now. I think that early on in his political career, the things that he said and the things that he did felt like he was standing up for something, and now it doesn't. It maybe that being in that place it just inevitably whittles away at a person.
honestly, this is a horrible example, although I'm going to use it anyways, as it's sort of, if you're in a marriage and your partner cheats on you,
Mm-hmm.
there's a loss of faith. There's a loss of trust. And I think for a lot of you who voted for Jagmeet, for hope for something different,
Mhm.
it feels like he cheated on you.
That's actually a really good analogy.
And for many who are in your camp, how hard is it to forgive?
I really love that analogy, actually, and I want to take it one step further.
Okay,
I was
didn't
actually
mean
just
to be.
Well, no,
Okay.
I was listening to a podcast lately, and he was talking about that the guy who
Was it
runs
the Will
is
and Dave podcast?
No,
Oh.
he's a counselor,
Okay.
and he was talking about dealing with couples who have dealt with infidelity, and he said one of the biggest differentiating factors between couples who can come back from infidelity and couples who can't is the ones who can't are ones who try to get back to where they were, who just want things to get back to the way things were. That doesn't work. That's how you
Right.
got in this mess in the first place.
Right.
The couples who make it are the couples who do something different and try to make something better. Politicians can't regain our trust by going back to doing the same things. They broke our trust. They can't just go back to the way things were and expect us to trust them again or to forget about it. And I don't want us to forget about it. They have to do something different. If I want Jagmeet Singh to reinstill some trust in his ability to lead the NDP or Canada, he's going to need to do something different now. He can't just go back to what he was or try to be the NDP that he was prior to a bumble like this. He's going to have to do something different.
So I know that your uncle and your aunt are watching this, and they are throwing up in their mouth a little bit at the fact that you voted for Jagmeet Singh. And
I didn't vote for him, actually. I voted for the local MP.
okay,
And
but
I
yeah,
knew
same
that,
thing.
yeah, it was a throwaway vote because I couldn't
Yes.
justify voting for red or blue. And so I
Right.
voted yellow, and
Yes.
it's a wasted vote. And to reference Murray Whitmer's comment there, it allowed me the right to complain. I voted
Yes.
to get myself the right to complain, and that's all I got out of it.
There you go.
It was my right to whinge and moan about the whole thing.
Except on that note, I think we should end the show on that, as I
Yeah,
do think
kind
it's
of rambling.
important. I think for Canadians, with the example of what is happening with Jagmeet, with the example of the holding of Pat and of Tamara, I think you all need to hold your politicians and your judicial system, because really all this is now in the judicial system. It's not really
be
in
held to task.
politics, but
They need to be held to task. We can't just let this wash over us and then in a year have forgotten about it. We need to stick to it.
so for those of you who are watching, we thoroughly appreciate it. If you'd like to like and subscribe, we love your comments. It would be awesome if you could share this with one of your friends or two or three. But we will be here next week, same station, YouTube, The Will and Dave Show.
The same bat time, the same
Hey,
bat
Bat
channel.
William, do you have anything you want to say to our listeners, watchers before we go?
I would. Stay safe, don't die, and have a wonderful night.